really feel also helps you enjoy the suck? Because sometimes work is a grind, right?
Yes, it is.
Do I love doing all of the data entry and paperwork and everything like that? No. Is it a necessity part of what I do for a living? Just because you don't enjoy it doesn't mean it doesn't need to get done.
Correct. Welcome. You are listening to Season 3 of the Bonafide Leaders Podcast, a podcast that exists to inspire legitimate and authentic leadership in the workplace and beyond. And I'm your host, Tim G. Williams. This season's theme is the intersection, sports, business, and leadership, which happen to be three of my greatest loves on earth. Now, if you don't play sports, you've never played sports, or you don't like sports, don't tune out. This podcast is for you too. I promise there will be nuggets for everyone. Welcome into another edition of the Bonafide Leaders Podcast, and I'm your host, Tim G. Williams. With me today, I have a doctor in the building, and I am proud to have my doctor, Dr. Ashley Spector. Let me tell you about her. She graduated magna cum laude from Parker University with her doctorate and completed an exclusive internship at the VA hospital in Dallas. She owns a chiropractic clinic where she focuses on family wellness, pediatrics, and correct me when I say this, perinatal, am I saying that correct? Okay, perinatal care. Holds a postgraduate certification in acupuncture. She has a chemistry degree from the University of San Diego, where she was on the Division I rowing teams. So that's the connection, sports, business, leadership. Additionally, she's worked in biomedical research, genotyping, utilization review for medical insurance, and as a postgraduate continuing education instructor. That is a mouthful. Married with 3 children, Dr. Spector enjoys running, traveling, and promoting holistic lifestyles. Dr. Ashley, that's the way I call you. So I'm just going to call you Dr. Ashley. Welcome in to the Bonafide Leaders Podcast.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Yes, it's wonderful to have you here. Today is a not so good day for running. It's raining hard today.
Yeah, it's raining hard.
It's a great day to record a podcast. So let's start back in the beginning. Where'd you grow up? Tell our listeners where you grew up and kind of how you got introduced to sports.
Okay, so I'm a Navy brat. My dad was in the Navy, retired 20 years in service. Okay. So we moved around a lot growing up. Yep. We moved 12 times in 15 years.
I didn't know it was that much.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Wow.
And then towards the end of my dad's career, he settled into one place. So the last 5 years, so like late middle school, high school, we got to stay in the same place.
Okay.
So like my introduction to sports because of that was like I didn't get to do team sports until later on. So the first time I ever did a team sport was actually 8th grade. Because with military, you can't, like when you're only in a place potentially 6 months at a time, you can't commit to being on a team because when the Navy moves you, you move. And so sometimes that might be in the middle of a sports season or something and you can't abandon your team. Mm-hmm. So my early childhood, we did a lot of classes like gymnastics. I did figure skating, martial arts, all sorts of stuff like that. And then once we were able to settle down, is when I started getting into team sports and everything. So, but yeah, we moved all over the place. So Hawaii, Texas, Florida, New Mexico, California, Colorado. Hawaii and Colorado, I lived the longest.
Okay.
So I lived a block away from the ocean when I lived in Hawaii. Wow. It was awesome. Wow. So I really feel like that built a lot of appreciation for nature for me. Mm-hmm. And so that's really one of my favorite things about a lot of sports activities is you're outdoors, you're doing it outdoors. But yeah, didn't really, like I said, get involved in team sports until middle school. In middle school, did, just intramural volleyball and fell in love with it. Really? Fell in love with it. Okay. Absolutely loved it. It was, but I was late to the game, these days. I mean, 8th grade, I probably wouldn't even make a team here in Texas, because so many of the kids in North Texas especially have been doing volleyball since they were 5, 6, so starting at 12, 13, 14, you're really late to the game. You don't have those skills. You don't have, the training and the technique and stuff. And so I definitely had to kind of catch up, with all of that.
So that's a lot of sports.
Yeah.
I heard the one that jumped out to me the most was figure skating.
Yeah.
That seems really hard. I actually have never ice skated before. So what was that like, figure skating?
Figure skating, like initially it's just, can you balance on the skates, and then can you forward propel yourself, and then you start getting into like, okay, moving, you're going to have your left foot stationary and you're going to have your right foot do an in and out sort of pattern to kind of get you to go gracefully in a circle. And then you're going to do a crossover instead of just going in and out. And so it's I find like with martial arts, with figure skating, a lot of that stuff, it's like you start with a basic skill and then you build on top of that.
Like math.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So which sport, let's talk about the individual side before we go to the team side.
Okay.
From an individual sport, what did you like the most?
Ooh.
Growing up.
Yeah. Like, does college count for that? Like,
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah, I would say individual sport, it was figure skating.
Okay.
Like gymnastics I was terrible at because like I couldn't do the splits. I didn't have like good flexibility. And, I definitely think that when you're not used to doing sports, like you're a little bit klutzier. Yeah. So like certain things like balance beam and stuff like that, I just wasn't great at. Figure skating, I do feel like I could understand, like, we're going to do this and then we're going to add to it. So I liked that. I liked the peace that you sometimes had being out there. Like, so when you're doing your class and everything, they like instruction, we're going to teach you how to do this. Then you're going to go off and you're going to practice doing it on your own. And like learning how to control my body and feel graceful was kind of cool to kind of develop those skills and everything. Martial arts, I think I actually did the most of, and that's because my brother's a black belt. So even though I didn't do a ton of martial taekwondo. Yeah, okay. Taekwondo. So even though I only did taekwondo up to a yellow belt, green stripe, my brother did it till he was a black belt, and I became, his sparring partner, essentially. Like, hey, I want to practice this kata. I want to practice this. Will you hold pads for me? Will you do this and that? And yeah, that was fun.
Older brother, younger brother?
Older brother, 18 months older. So really close.
Yeah, really close. Like me and my brother, too. We're 17 months.
Okay, yeah.
Right, yeah, so I'm older than him, so the opposite. All right, so were you at this point, let's talk about, I guess, high school. Were you thinking of what else can I do now that you could participate in the team sports? You said intramural volleyball was one. Yeah. Was there anything else that you thought about doing?
I tried out for the swim team. I did not make it. Flip turns were not my jam. Like I'm a great swimmer, but like growing up in Hawaii, being a block away from the ocean, I'm a strong swimmer. Yeah. But I'm not used to hitting a wall and turning around. It's open water. There's no turns and stuff like that. So, and that really makes a difference on your speed, like not being able to do a flip turn properly just like tanks your speed. Cause I would like think I was turning and I'd get water at my nose and, start flailing around on my back. And yeah, flip turns killed it for me. Like strong swimmer, love the ocean, love the water, but not swim team.
I got a funny story with me and Tamara that I'll tell you about maybe off camera with Hawaii and swimming. But I'd imagine that, your practice for swimming was the ocean, which makes you, I would imagine, feel confident. Yes. And comfortable. Yes. In the water.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is different for people who grew up in the pool. You might be able to kind of, flip and all this kind of thing, but maybe not as strong. Yeah. With the background. Yeah. In the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah. And definitely when we took our kids on vacation a few years ago to Puerto Vallarta, it was like heavy waves. They had flags up, like be very, very cautious going into the water. And like growing up near the ocean, you can kind of like, I feel like I can walk the line on like when it's safe and when it's not safe, different than people who didn't grow up to the ocean. Like my husband was like, absolutely not. I'm not going in that water. And I was like, no, it's okay. But, I was constantly like every single wave was like, oh, wait, we're starting to get some crazy waves. Let's get out now, So, but yeah, it's very different, like swimming in the ocean versus swimming in the pool. Like, first of all, predators, like that's something that terrifies a lot of people and keeps them out of the ocean. My husband is one of those people that if he can't see what's around him, he does not want to be in the water and gets kind of freaked out, like when it's dark blue water and stuff and you can't see the bottom. But like for me, I kind of developed a safety and a comfort with that, it's different.
Yeah.
My dad, he also really helped me develop a comfort in the water. So my dad, when he was first in the military, he did EOD, which stands for Explosive Ordnance Disposal.
Okay.
He was an underwater bomb defusal guy. Yeah. So my dad's comfort in the ocean is really high. I mean, it's what he did all day, every day for almost 10 years in very, very dangerous situations.
And any situation that I'm thinking about, but, I'm sure there's some classified stuff that, he was doing too, but my God. Okay.
Yeah. So like when I was a toddler, my dad would literally like put us in like a float, like a dinghy, little, floating raft, and he would put a strap around his torso and he would just go swim, and just for miles. And so my brother and I are just sitting in this little raft being pulled along the coast and everything. So yeah, different level of comfort with the ocean.
Now, you mentioned Navy, and I think I heard New Mexico is one of the states too.
Yes.
I don't think of ocean when I think of New Mexico.
Correct.
So what's going on there?
Okay, so that's the transition point in my dad's career. So he was initially an enlisted person, so he did not have a college degree. Had been in the military for numerous years at that point in his career that he knew he wanted to do it as a career. He wanted to make that, like he was going to retire from the Navy. And so he decided to ask his superiors if he could qualify for a program called Officer Candidate School, where you kind of go through testing and stuff. And then if you pass that and get approved for that, then the military will actually send you to college. You become an officer, and then you have another part of your career as an officer. And so my dad went to the University of New Mexico. He's a Lobo for his undergrad.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right. So anything at this point, we're going to talk about rowing here in a second, but anything at this point that you didn't really like about sports?
Definitely like in high school, great team, all of my teammates, fantastic people. But like, because I was kind of late to the game of doing competitive sports, like I really needed to get on a competitive team off season. That way because I needed kind of all year training to get my skills up to make it to varsity and everything in high school. So trying out for like competitive teams and really seeing like how toxic competitiveness can start happening, that, sometimes in certain scenarios, like when they're your teammates, they build you up. But when you're competing for that spot against each other, then it can be kind of cutthroat and stuff. And I didn't like that. I didn't like how some people would. And luckily, I never had a scenario where I was backstabbed or anything like that. But, I definitely want harmony and peace and everything like that. And sometime when it's like, when you're fighting for the same spot on a team, some girls, the sportsmanship starts deteriorating. And that part of competitive sports, I don't really care for. That I really think, as great and important as sports are, end of the day, it's a game, like, so that part I didn't really care for, but overall I had a really, really positive experience with volleyball, and crazy enough, my coaches in high school, it was actually a family. So like the freshman squad, the JV squad, and the varsity squad coaches were all related to each other, and they were all from Hawaii.
Oh, wow.
And in Hawaii, like volleyball's huge.
Okay.
Huge, huge.
Okay.
And the crazy thing is two of the coaches, so the JV coach and the head coach, were women that were 5 foot, which is
Sure.
very unusual
Yeah.
for volleyball.
Sure.
We usually think of really, really tall people. And so it was cool to see how dominant they could be, even though they were so short, because they knew the game and they taught me heart for the game, puts, like builds that drive to want to get better.
Mm-hmm.
And then, knowing and understanding the game, you can outthink your competitors sometimes. So, in like my kids play soccer now.
Mm-hmm.
So my oldest was never the fastest kid on the field. And it's like, you don't have to be the fastest kid on the field. You have to look at the play, see where the play is going, and be where the play is going to go. And then it doesn't matter how fast you are, because as long as you're in the right place at the right time, you're going to still be able to be effective. And so like having a short, volleyball coaches, it was like, you don't have to be the tallest. I'm not necessarily tall for a volleyball player, 5'8". But how do you read your opponents and see and predict where they're going to make their play? So that was super cool. And like Hawaii culture and having those ohana, is family in Hawaii. And they definitely, it brought a cohesive feel to the entire program between freshman year and senior year.
Yeah.
And it
that's
was
ohana for real.
Yeah, it really, really was. Like, and I kept in touch with them for a few years after graduating and stuff because they were just good people. They cared about you as a person, not just as a player.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So in high school, you play volleyball. And do you do any other sports for the varsity team in high school?
No.
Okay, so you're focused. You're locked in on volleyball.
Yep.
At some point, you become a Division I rower at the University of San Diego. Talk to us about that.
Okay, so graduate from high school. Like I was a good player, not a great player, not an outstanding player. So I didn't have an opportunity to play volleyball in college. So I go to the University of San Diego, and my dad's like, you really should join like intramurals or something like that. That way you stay in shape, because everybody's got to worry about that freshman 15, right?
Yes.
And I come from a long line of people with slow metabolism. So he was worried that I was going to come home and need a new wardrobe because I was just going to, fill out that freshman year. So I took my dad's advice and was looking at, on-campus opportunities for sports and stuff. And the University of San Diego at that time had open tryouts for rowing. And I was like my grandfather had a summer house on a lake in Wisconsin, and in the summertime there was an island that you could row to. So that's what my experience with rowing was. And so I was like, oh, okay, like let me try. Like, how hard could this be? Totally different. But really what they were looking for are people that like were athletic, and can you translate that athleticism to learning a new skill? And if you have the drive and you're willing to wake up at 4:30 in the morning in college, they were willing to take you on their team.
Wow.
So I went to open tryouts and made the team.
Small sacrifice, 4:30. College. Not the easiest time in life to wake up that early. I mean, it's not easy now to wake up at 4:30.
Yeah. It's a really, really good way in college to stay focused and prioritize things. So there was one time that it was around Halloween time, and my childhood best friend was in San Diego as well, different universities, San Diego State University. And a group of her friends had rented a hotel room downtown San Diego that was haunted. And we were going to spend the night in this hotel. We were going to walk around the downtown area, and I wanted to participate in that. But I had practice the next day. So I was like, oh, I'm going to be tired, but I don't usually do this, but this is a rare opportunity. I'm going to go do this. We stayed up probably till 2:00 in the morning. I don't even know if I actually fell asleep or just closed my eyes for 2 hours before I had to get out and go on the boat. was in between every rest period on the boat where we would like kind of stop and take a breath. I fall asleep sitting up. So yeah, it definitely, sports teach you discipline, and prioritization, that in ways that other things don't, because like physically you can't do some of these things unless you make it a priority.
Right.
Yeah. So,
you know what's crazy is that I had teammates, believe this or not, this is very true. And I always struggled to understand how they had the energy. But I had some teammates who were older than me. This was my freshman year, and they're like 22 already, and they would drive a couple hours north to a particular spot. I won't say where, because I don't know what activities they were engaged in. But they would come back. Sometimes I wake up because they're just loud coming back in, and it'd be like, 4 in the morning. And we would have practice sometimes at 8 a.m.
Yeah.
And they would practice, particularly this one guy, with unbelievable energy, no matter what. And they would do all kinds of stuff. Wow. Like when they were out, they weren't just driving. They were doing all kinds of stuff. And I never could understand that.
Yeah.
Where's the energy come from? How can you play your best when I smell stuff on you?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I guess you and I are better connected that way than I can relate to this other guy.
Yeah. I couldn't do some of that stuff. And definitely with being like a chemistry major too, it was a good tool to help me get up, get my butt moving. And I took all early classes. So as soon as I got off the water, sometimes I had time to shower, sometimes I didn't, but I got my butt in class. And 7 a.m. had my general chemistry class freshman year, I'm not falling asleep in that class. So.
You did that on purpose.
Yeah.
You organized your schedule in such a way to make sure that, you weren't going to be missing class.
Yes.
You're there.
Yeah. My dad was always big on prior planning prevents piss poor performance. So, yeah, I was mindful of that.
Yeah. That definitely sounds like a military statement. Having gone to a military school, I can appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right. So, what are the skills that you're using in rowing? What are the skills that are most important? If you want to be a good rower, talk to our listeners and me about what it takes to be a good rower.
Okay, so when we talk about skills, not a lot, honestly. Like the balance, that's the biggest thing. So I was in an 8-man boat. So you have a coxswain and then 8 rowers. And so when the oars are out and they're in a flat position, the oars are actually causing the boat to balance and be buoyant, or help with some of the buoyancy.
Gotcha.
When you pick the oars up to change position, if you have to balance, otherwise the boat tips to the sides. So that's the biggest thing, is core strength and balance is the initial skill.
Okay.
And then flexibility, but that's not necessarily a skill. And then core, it's synchronized, right? So you all have to hit the water with your oar at the same time.
To maximize your speed.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And there's not a ton of distance between the rowers.
Right.
So if I'm going faster, I literally might hit my oar into the oar of the rower behind me or the rower in front of me. So it's all, staying synchronized. So I don't know how much of a skill that is.
Well, it's hand-eye coordination.
Right.
I see that. And it's rhythm.
Yeah.
And it's awareness.
Yeah.
So I'm calling out all the skills that I see. I never wrote anything, but to me, that seems like you got to have some skill.
Yeah.
And then strength, the core
much
strength.
That is, and leg strength.
Okay.
Most people think rowing and they think arm strength.
Right.
It is a leg dominant sport, leg and back. And so that's actually, rowing gave me an aha moment with chiropractic.
Which is exactly where I want to go next. That's perfect. All right. So I knew one other person like you in college who rowed. She rowed for University of Texas.
Okay.
And strong.
Yeah.
That's what I remember the most about her. And she was like you. So she was athletic, meaning she had done other stuff. And I don't know if she did rowing in high school. I don't know. But she was from the Northeast. So maybe it was more of a thing. Yeah. I don't know. So, all right. You got this aha moment.
Yeah.
What's the aha moment that you get from rowing?
Okay. So, I so many aha moments, but aha moment with rowing and chiropractic was, so with rowing, in order to determine the seat, like who is the strongest, the most coordinated, the one who's going to lead the team, you don't always do that in the boat, because when you do it in the boat, you're having like everybody stop rowing and keep their oars flat, and you're just having one or two people row and kind of like see how they're doing, which isn't necessarily the greatest determinant of like who is the strongest, who is the fastest. And so we would do what is called erging, where you're on a rowing machine as like our time trials, and a way to kind of prove where we stood on the team. There were always buckets like trash cans nearby, because that's where you would end up puking because you would just push yourself so hard and everything. So the one day we were doing time trials, I really wanted to get like the top seat in the boat, and everything was really, really pushing myself, and sacrificed form for speed.
Yeah.
And I used poor form, and it was the first time in my life I threw out my back. Didn't feel it at the time. I think I had adrenaline and everything. But later that day and the next day, I was 19 and could not bend over to touch my knees. Like, it hurt so much. I couldn't even touch my knees. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm in this much pain. What do I do? Well, luckily, I've had childhood, or I had chiropractic my whole childhood. Okay. Unfortunately, my mom was thrown through the windshield of a car when she was 16. Wow. So she always needed some type of chiropractic care just to keep her functional, because of some of those injuries. So it was always familiar with me. And so when I had that injury, I was like, well, I'm going to go to chiropractor, see if they can fix this. And one session was able to get full range of motion back, eliminate all of the pain. And I was like, aha. Like I really hadn't had a ton of opportunities where I'd had severe pain and then relief from that with chiropractic. Chiropractic at that point in my life had been a lot of maintenance care, holistic care, wellness care. And I hadn't had injuries and stuff where it really was like took me from severe pain to no pain that quickly. And I was like, oh, wow, like this really does work. This is crazy. So that was one of my first aha moments with chiropractic.
So you're studying chemistry at this point. And did you decide, you know what, I think I want to change my major? Or did you decide, no, I want to stick with this, but maybe there might be a future for me in something else? What were you thinking at this point?
So in undergrad, like I had that aha moment with chiropractic, but I hadn't thought of chiropractic at all in my career whatsoever. I love chemistry, love chemistry. And so I was all in on just chemistry at the time. And chemistry is actually what got me to stop being on the rowing team, is that I had traveled abroad in undergrad, and I'd studied abroad in Ireland. And when I came back, I rejoined the rowing team. I rejoined all my studies and everything, but it was a different level of like academic rigor at my home university than what it had been when I was in Ireland. And I had to catch up. I had to like really like academically get my like we talked earlier, how you get one thing, you learn one thing, and then you build on it. Yeah. So I was still in the early kind of phase of learning some of the chemistry stuff. So I had taken organic chemistry in Ireland, and then I was supposed to take my second semester of organic chemistry back at the University of San Diego, and was not prepared for how far ahead the University of San Diego was in the organic chemistry. So by the end of that semester coming back, I had finals and everything, and I didn't feel prepared for my finals, but I also had a rowing competition. That was a travel competition. We were going to be going from San Diego up to the northern part of California for this competition. It was going to be numerous days of practice and getting used to the water up there before we actually had the competition. So we're looking at basically taking a week away from studies and stuff. And that was the moment where I had to like make a tough decision to be like, hey, I don't have a scholarship. I'm doing this for recreation. I love it. But I don't want to repeat classes because I failed because I made a poor decision prioritizing sport over responsibility. And so I made the tough decision to say, hey, I'm not going to be going to this race. I'm going to stay. I'm going to do my studies. I'm going to do well on these exams. And that's when I parted ways with rowing.
Look at that.
Yeah.
And never looked back, really.
No, never really looked back. And, on some of those moments with coaches and stuff, like their priority is their job, right? And so
like all of us.
and school was my job.
That's right.
It was costing me money to go to school. It was costing me a lot of money as a private school. And so I made the tough decision and, didn't feel the support from my coach with making that decision. I mean, we had alternates and stuff. It wasn't a live or die kind of situation. I wasn't like their absolute star that gosh, you're going to sink the team, if you don't go. So, made the tough decision, but yeah, never really looked back because I knew where I wanted to go and chemistry was where I wanted to go.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So let's fast forward a little bit. Talk about the career you were doing right before you went into chiropractic.
Okay. So I did, when I was in California, I worked for a company where we did medical devices and tested cardiac markers. And then when we moved to Texas, I got a job at the UT Southwestern doing genotyping for their psychiatry department, excuse me. So I was genotyping. I was taking a small clipping of a mouse tail and breaking that down, extracting the DNA, sequencing the DNA. It was a really interesting, really cool project that we were working on. The department head was figuring out how to turn on and off the schizophrenia gene. And so you would, and the end goal was to develop a therapeutic, a medication or a drug of some kind that would, for people who have schizophrenia, turn that gene off.
Yeah.
That way they stop expressing symptoms of schizophrenia. And so that's kind of weird. We're triggering and turning off schizophrenia in mice and reading whether or not we're doing that through their genetics. So super cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Bonafide Leaders works with emerging leaders, established leaders, and executives. We exist to help you, your teams, and your business thrive, specializing in executive coaching, leadership development, organizational consulting, and keynote speaking services. Providing the absolute highest level of quality and service, we partner with our clients to help them grow, elevate their leadership effectiveness, navigate organizational change, culture, and leadership transitions, to advance employee engagement and retention, and raise bottom-line operations. If these are the kinds of problems you're seeking to solve and you're humble, hungry, and coachable, we might be a good fit. If that's you, reach out to me at bonafideleaders.com/contact.
Yeah.
So you were doing that work and then a light bulb comes on. How do you get to
Oh, that's what you're asking. Okay.
Yeah.
So before I left San Diego, when you first graduate from college, just with a bachelor's degree in chemistry, you are an entry-level lab tech.
Mm-hmm.
And so I worked in a lab all day long, just doing what I was told to do. Was really, really good. I'm good at following orders.
Back to discipline for sports. Yeah.
And one of my bosses was like, Ashley, you're too smart to just be an entry-level, chemist the rest of your life. You really need to go back to school and further your studies. And so then I was like, okay, let's look at that. What does grad school look like? So started looking at PhD in chemistry. Looked super awesome. But I had already kind of learned a little bit from being a chemist at that point, that even though I love the chemistry, I love people too. And when you're in a lab by yourself, working with chemicals, doing this experiment.
And mice are hanging out with you too.
I didn't even see the mice.
Oh.
There was a biologist that literally just brought me a test tube with this tiny little clipping at the end of the mouse tail. I never saw the mice.
Okay, so you really are solo.
Solo in a lab all day by myself. So I became that super awkward person at the coffee station. Hey, how are you doing? How was your weekend? I just wanted like interaction with people. And so I like clung on to people at like the coffee station because I was so lonely. So it's like, okay, do I see myself being happy with decades and decades and decades of being lonely in my lab? Maybe not. So what other things out there would I potentially be interested in doing? And so I started talking to people. I started talking to my primary care doctor. I talked to my dentist. I talked to family friends that were lawyers and physical therapists, and just tried to get a broad sense of like who went to grad school, who furthered beyond just a bachelor's degree, are they happy with their decision? Are they fulfilled in their life?
Yeah.
The only person that like loved what they did still and would do it again that I talked to was my chiropractor. Because all of those other jobs came with a lot of sacrifices. I'm drawn towards medicine. I'm drawn towards the human body. It's fascinating to me. And so like I was thinking, physical therapy, dentist, medical doctor, so many of those specialties are on call. And I knew I wanted to have a family. I knew I didn't want to like stop in the middle of a recital and go and do something. I knew I wanted to be present and have that work-home-like balance. And really, my childhood chiropractor seemed like he had the best home-work balance. And that was important to me. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. And so like I really wanted to be present for my kids as well as have a career.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you get this figured out. You realize that the only person who's really happy in their life is this chiropractor. And you are looking at what schools to go to.
Yeah.
And you decide on Parker University.
Yeah.
Okay. So what made you choose Parker and what was that journey?
My childhood chiropractor recommended Parker University.
Okay.
They have a really great reputation within the chiropractic world of being very strong academically. Really, really do a good job of, not just teaching you quackery, really evidence-based, like
Quackery.
Yeah. And then also we had moved back to Texas. My husband got out of the Marine Corps. We had moved back to Texas because he's from Plano. And in Texas, there's only 2 chiropractic schools. And luckily, Parker University is here in the DFW area.
Nice.
So that worked out really well. So, yeah.
All right. So I would think you're going to have to educate me and our listeners on this, but I would think that in a medical kind of setup where you go and you get educated, you get your academic rounding. Now you can either go into someone's established practice, you can go into a hospital maybe, or you can go and do something on your own. And maybe there's another option that I'm not thinking about.
Yeah. So in chiropractic, there's not a ton of opportunities out there. Because it's really been a profession that has had a lot of controversy around it, like quackery, like literally when I was going there was this whole website of like chiropractors or quacks.com or something like that. And it had page after page after page about what we are doing is not evidence-based. And so like, I think when you have skepticism about an entire profession, it's not as well known throughout medicine as a viable option or alternative. And so most of the opportunities after graduation are you go work for another chiropractor, you go work for yourself, or you do research.
Okay.
Yeah. At that, I was fortunate that I got to work at the VA hospital. That was just developing. That was very much in its infancy. I would say there were probably 4 medical treatment facilities in the country that had, in the VA, that had a chiropractic clinic as part of their hospital. And when, so I was, I think, a few years after that program had been launched, to where there was rapport between the other departments and our department at that point. But talking to my clinic director, he said literally initially when they first opened the clinic, they had the way the VA system is, it's like an HMO system. So chiropractic is considered a specialist. So you need a referral from another doctor in order to go see a chiropractor in the VA system. And so when you're dependent on other people to send you patients, and there's skepticism out there, sometimes it's hard for them to trust you to send their. So my boss, Dr. Moses, he literally went to pain management and neurosurgery and was like, the people who you feel like you have nothing more to help them with, and that you're just hit a brick wall where there's no, we can't up your medications anymore. We can't give you more surgery. I know you're still suffering. What else do we do? He's like, send them to us. Let's try. What's it going to hurt? And we helped. We helped in these cases that they thought were, not going to change anything. And not to say we're taking people, in those advanced cases from severe pain to, no pain. We weren't doing anything like that, but we were establishing activities of daily living again. We were establishing the ability for that person to dress themselves a little bit more, just like physical therapy, just like occupational therapy. We're just another piece of the puzzle that helps restore function.
Restoration of function.
Yeah.
I like that. That's a nice, easy way for people to kind of get what it is that you do.
Yeah.
So let's talk about pairing. And you've talked about it a little bit, but in what ways does the traditional healthcare system, which I'll call kind of sick care, pair with chiropractic care, if at all?
Supportive. There are times where people, not everybody wants to take medication. Right. And so if you go to a primary care doctor and you're like, I have this neck pain, they're going to be like, okay, here's a muscle relaxer, here's a pain reliever, here's a, anti-inflammatory type stuff. And then what do you do when the patient was like, well, I don't want to take any of that? It's like, okay, then what? And so chiropractic is starting to become more and more accepted and more incorporated as a viable alternative to kind of manage some of that stuff without medication. Just like physical therapy and occupational therapy, we're working on improving range of motion. We're working on improving posture, which is a huge thing in our culture right now.
Especially now, yeah.
Yeah, big thing.
Yeah.
I mean, really, I think I've used the word ergonomics more in my career since COVID than I ever expected I was ever going to. Yeah. But yeah, posture and ergonomics are huge.
So like you, I kind of grew up with chiropractic care. Even though I was in a single parent home, my mom worked it out. We had enough money to be able to go to the chiropractor. So like you, I've kind of grown up with it. It's just part of what we did. And as athletes, growing up, my mom just thought it was important for us to always be in alignment to be able to perform at our best. I want to ask you about running a business. So that you want to provide care to people. You know that you want to engage with people and not just the tails of these mice.
Yeah.
You decide that you want to do this for a profession. Did you think, I want to run a business too? Or did you think you wanted to be under someone? What was your thinking back there?
I initially, I think any time you go into a profession knowing that there's not a lot of opportunities besides entrepreneurship, you have to make room for that as a potential.
Okay. So mentally, it's an option.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. It was like, okay, well, I either worked for somebody else, my whole entire life, or I work for myself. So even going to school, eventually my goal was to own my own clinic.
But was that your goal as a kid when you were growing up?
No.
So it's important for the listener to catch the shift that took place once you changed professions.
Yeah.
And you made a personal choice to say, you know what, long term at some point, I want to own my own thing.
Yeah.
And what was the motivation for you to do that?
Autonomy. You know, like if I own the clinic, I can set my schedule around my kids' sports practices. I can set my schedule around major life events and things like that. It sometimes when you have a boss and you're like, hey, can I take off to go to my kids' recital? Like sometimes they approve that and sometimes they don't. So autonomy was very, very important to me. And, you know, I had worked at the VA hospital, awesome clinic director, and then I worked in private practice for a little bit under a great doctor, James Contarados. And I saw things I liked and I saw things that I didn't like. You know, so when I worked for Dr. Contarados, he had a fabulous practice, very, very busy practice. And the way he had his practice set up was you came in, you saw a massage therapist, then you saw a physical therapist, and then you saw a chiropractor.
Interesting.
And so there was I felt like I missed a lot of initial data on that patient because I had had two other allied health professionals touch and modify that patient's presentation before I got to see them. So I felt like I wanted, maybe I'm a little control freak. I wanted more control. I wanted to see that. And so like, that's the thing in my office is like, you come to my office and you're with me the whole entire time. You're not going and seeing somebody else and then coming back to me. It's, I'm doing the assessment, I'm doing the treatment, I'm doing home care recommendations and stuff like that because I want to be the first person to see how that presentation is. That way I can better advise you. So if you've already seen occupational therapy or physical therapy and they've already done some stretching on your hamstrings, by the time you get to me, if I check your hamstrings, the tonicity, you know, how tight it is, might be different. And so I might not know, oh, you keep having this be an issue every single time if somebody's already changed it.
Right.
Yeah.
There's somebody listening who maybe they want to start a business, but they would say, man, I don't have a business background. I don't have a business degree. And you're thinking and you're experiencing and you're saying what to that listener who's thinking about this, but maybe doesn't have the business background? Can you impart some wisdom into that person?
My experience, when I started my practice 14 years ago, the internet was a very different thing. And so going on the internet, trying to gather data and stuff, it took so much time to try to do research and stuff. I actually would go down to the SBA office and try to see if they were a resource that could teach me about how to start a business and stuff. And I didn't get good results. I didn't get confidence that I was doing the right thing. Luckily for me, my husband is an entrepreneur. He owns, him and his brother own a foundation repair company. And my husband had already started his own business. He ran his father's business for a while. Economy dipped. They needed to part ways because there wasn't enough work for my husband's dad's company to keep like the bills being paid for everybody.
Sure.
And so his dad was like, I think you need to start your own thing, do your own thing. I can't provide all the business to keep pay all your bills and everything. So my husband and his brother started their own business. So having somebody, I really think like have a mentor or have somebody who has experience with starting a business themselves, not buying a franchise unless that's what you're doing, but whatever you want to do. If it's starting your own business, you need to have somebody who has done it. I really think that's like the fastest way to get from point A to point B is, you can do tons of research on the internet. You can, look at YouTube videos, you can AI stuff, but really when somebody's actually put the boots on the ground, filling out the paperwork, filing it, going here, going there, they're going to do a better job of telling you what to do, what not to do than reinventing the wheel on your own. And my husband's totally different industry than I am. So there's obviously things that I had to figure out on my own when it came to credentialing with medical insurance and stuff like that, getting facility licensing and stuff like that, that he didn't have to do. But I really do think that it helps having either a mentor or somebody who has done it that can help advise you on how to do it. It just is way more efficient that way. Yeah.
So running your business today, in what ways are you leveraging some of what you got from sports
Oh,
growing
okay.
up?
Yeah. So like definitely in clinical practice, I feel like I have from doing sports, I understand some of like the vectors of stress. So when you
Okay.
have an injury, it's usually you've applied too much stress or too much force, too much pressure into a certain body part at a particular angle or a vector. And I feel like from doing sports, I can in my head picture how the pain, the way the patient is presenting got that way. You know, it's like, oh, okay, you must have rolled your ankle like this, and like, you know, it must have gone laterally and then, you know, flexed forward, and that's why it's popped this direction. Or this muscle's tight because you must be continuously using in repetitive motion, you know, doing something like that. So I do think that having that experience of performing some of those repetitive tasks can show me where the likely problem area is. Because when it comes to the human body, where you experience pain isn't necessarily where the problem is.
Right.
You know, you can have pain in your arm that's coming from your neck, you know, and that's one of the things where it does take a skilled professional to kind of figure that out, that, you know, because most lay people who don't have medical knowledge, they go to where the pain is and only where the pain is. And so like putting the whole picture together, I feel like really sports helped me thrive in that sense. And dedication too, like, and like repetition, and kind of always fine tuning things. Like in business, if you think that you're going to just sit on your laurels, oh, I'm so good at this, therefore I don't need to expand more, I don't need to learn more, I don't need to pivot, I don't need to try, you're going to be passed up. Like, because there is always new technology, there is always new skills, there's always new data, especially about the human body. Like we're constantly developing new therapies. We're constantly learning things about the body that we didn't know. Especially when it comes to like the nervous system. And like the nervous system really controls a lot of like things. You know, and that's where some of the muscle memory and stuff like that, as an athlete, you can understand how the body works a little bit more because you've stressed it.
No question. No question. Most of us who've played sports long enough have gotten surgeries, or we've certainly had, if not surgeries, injuries.
Yeah.
And typically injuries in different parts of the body, lower body, upper body, and have been off the shelf, if you will, for a while.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's one of the things, even with our son, we can say, hey, where are you feeling this? Where are you feeling that? And because both me and my wife have run track and field, particularly my wife, you know, we can kind of help steer a little bit, which is definitely pretty cool.
Yeah. And sports, I really feel also helps you enjoy the suck, you know, because sometimes work is a grind, right?
Yes,
like, you know, like, do I love doing all of the data entry and paperwork and everything like that? No. Is it a necessity part of what I do for a living? Absolutely.
Right.
You know, and so like, when it came to rowing, like, you know, doing that erging, you know, going on and pushing your body to the limits where you're puking. I mean, numerous girls, like, not only would we puke, there were numerous girls that develop exercise-induced asthma from exerting themselves so much on like those rowing, you know, like practice times and everything. So, yeah, learning to enjoy the suck, you know, like just because you don't enjoy it doesn't mean it doesn't need to get done.
Correct. Say that one more time.
Just because you don't enjoy doing it doesn't mean it doesn't need to get done.
Got to get it done.
For sure.
Especially as a business owner.
Especially as a business owner.
So there's a leadership aspect to what you do too. You've got people in the office who've worked for you, support the practice. What are you bringing from sports, from a leadership perspective, maybe even from your coaches, to your staff, to your team?
Learn their abilities and trust those. Because you can't be in all places doing all the things all the time. So you have to be able to delegate. You have to be able to trust that delegation. Especially like, I don't want to go home with homework, you know, because I want when I leave the office, that to be family time.
Yeah.
And if I can't trust the people that I've hired to support me to do the right things, then I end up with homework. It draws away from my family time. And so really to be the best, like most efficient entrepreneur, you have to learn what things your team is good at, trust that, and give them the freedom to either, fall in the dirt and scrape their knees or, really take off. And that happens sometimes, and it's okay. And that's really like when we're human. Mistakes happen. We're gonna miss free throws. We're gonna trip when we're in a race. We're gonna have things that present opportunities where we didn't perform the way we wanted to, and knowing that you can always pick yourself up, dust yourself off, try again. And that's more important than just wallowing in the mistake. Super important with being a leader in a business, and super important in building confidence within your team.
Yeah.
If you constantly are hovering around them, stopping them from making mistakes, they lose confidence in themselves.
Sure. I don't think it's ever great to, be known as the hovering manager, the hovering boss, the helicopter.
Yeah.
Boss. Yeah, we call them helicopter because they're just always circling around us. No, it's not the best, is it, from a leadership practice?
No.
Yeah, so I like what you say there, which is trust your people. First of all, learn what their skills are and their abilities.
Right.
Trust them, and then delegate the work.
Yeah.
And you find yourself freed up, and they find themselves more empowered and more confident to do the work.
Exactly. Yeah. So a lot of the time, like in my office, with chiropractic, a lot of it is you have your own style, kind of, when you're doing treatments, when you're doing assessments. Like some doctors like to do a certain protocol.
Sure.
When I hire other chiropractors to come in and work in my practice, one of the things I tell them in the interview process is I want you to build your practice within my practice. I don't need you to duplicate me because you're not authentic. You need to be your best authentic self. In my practice, there's 2 other chiropractors. I'm the tallest of all of the chiropractors in the office. So how can I expect them to do the same thing that I'm doing, when physically their body shape is totally different than mine? And that's another thing that sports teaches you, is that we're all built different.
Yes.
It's
real good.
A short basketball player, like Jason Kidd is going to do different things than LeBron James.
Even though Jason Kidd's actually 6'4", but he looks small on the court.
LeBron James, though.
LeBron James is huge. He's 6'9" and strong, and I get it. But they look small.
Sorry, Jason, if you're listening. Not saying you're short king.
No, but I get your point.
Yeah.
And I think sports does help. It's a little bit of a diversity play as well. So not only do we recognize that people have different shaped bodies, some people are faster, some people are slower, some people are higher jumpers, some people are more good at technique.
Yeah.
I just think that helps the perspective of having a diverse mindset, recognizing that everybody brings a little something to the party.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily a bad thing that is different from you.
Yeah.
If anything, you see how it can accentuate what you've got going on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And as long as we all communicate well, that's a huge thing. That's a huge thing with patient care. That's a huge thing with business ownership, and management of my employees and stuff. Communication. And that's another area where you really need to be flexible on things, because people respond to communication differently. Like, I am the oldest doctor in the office, and the way I prefer to communicate is different than some of my staff. Like one of my staff members, if she has if there is a performance issue or something that I would like her to improve, she would prefer that not be a verbal conversation.
Interesting.
Because she feels put on the spot and goes into kind of stress mode and really starts ruminating about everything. Me personally, I would rather that be a verbal conversation, because then I can see your body language, I can get your tone of voice, I can understand the threat a little bit better personally if it's a verbal conversation than in written form. In written form, even when it's not all capitals or something, sometimes you're going to perceive that as coming off more aggressive than what the intention is. But for her, That's one thing that I've learned is she would prefer, if there is a performance issue, please notify me in email or text form. That way she can reflect, see what changes she needs to make. And then when she's ready, have a conversation with me about it, like, what else am I doing this? This is my plan kind of thing. So that's another really important thing is not all of us communicate the same way. And especially with the younger generations, you really have to be ready to adapt to that because just because that's your preference doesn't mean that's going to work great for the rest of the team.
Yeah, that's exactly right. One of the benefits maybe of us both, having kids is you recognize they're Gen Zers. And Gen Z is not us. And that's okay.
That's okay.
And so I'm working with a group right now, and one of the continuous themes that comes up with this group of leaders is kind of complaining a little bit about the other generations, if you will.
Yeah.
And just a nugget that you just heard from Dr. Ashley, is we have to recognize there's like 4 generations in the workplace at one time right now. And one of the best things I think that can service all of us is to recognize those differences and then support and meet people where they're at.
Yeah.
It's not wrong that someone would want a text. It's not wrong that someone would want a verbal, input.
Yeah.
It's just different.
Yeah.
And we can meet people so long as we understand each other. And then keep it moving. That's my input.
And humble, stay humble too, because no matter where you are with your business ownership, entrepreneur journey, if you think you're the best and you can't learn from anything, you're not staying humble, then you really do shut the door to growth.
That's good.
And so if I dictate it, no, we all will be, communicating this way, it's my way or the highway. We're I'm not going to attract young talent, and they do bring different things to the table, and they're going to attract their generation in a way that I can't. And so if I want to only pigeonhole myself to my generation or older, then I got to stick with my method. If I want to have an expansion, mindset and be willing to grow and adapt to these other people and be humble that I don't know everything and what's right for me isn't right for everybody, I think really helps too.
I did not know you're going to drop some leadership dimes today. I appreciate that, Dr. Ashley. You may not know, but I love this topic. I can talk about it all day.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to get you out of here on this. Some little bit of rapid fire.
Okay.
A little bit of rapid fire. So let me see. Let's go with number 1. Are sports mandatory for the Spector home, meaning the children?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. My oldest right now, she's 17. She is 4'11". There's not a lot of sports that, as a 17-year-old, 4'11".
But she could be a volleyball coach.
I mean, if she grew up in the islands, maybe. No, so I definitely don't think sports are a necessity. I think they're an awesome tool to build confidence in yourself, develop interpersonal skills with other people, to help you move your body, get a strong body is important for a healthy mind, and and so you need all of that stuff to be the greatest person you want to be, and so I feel like it's a tool, but not a necessity. And I do feel like as we get older, pivoting away from sports, you still need to find ways to move your body to help manage things. Right now, I do running. And I actually developed my love for running in college at the University of San Diego. So when we had bad weather, you would either erg or you would run.
Nice.
So the first time that happened, they were like, "Oh, the weather's bad. Go run around the bay." And I was like, "How far is that?" They're like, "About 6 miles." I had only run the furthest at that point in my life that I had run in one consecutive stretch was 1 mile. So going from 1 mile to 6 miles, I was like, oh my gosh, can I do this? And you just learn how to pace yourself. You learn how to listen to your body, you enjoy the suck. And eventually, the more you do it, the more it grows on you. So now I run as a way for mental health, because I really do feel that as an entrepreneur, You're never going to get away from the stresses. As a parent, you're never going to get away from the stresses. And what can you do to manage that? In my opinion, in America, we have an epidemic of people deprioritizing moving their body and how beneficial moving the body is for mind, body, spirit, you know, because there are especially for I love running long distances and stuff. There's a peace and a clarity that comes with that, that, not having anything else but me somewhere running by myself. I can clear my head. I can think about problems. I can think about future interactions. I do a lot of business analysis. How can I get better? I do a lot of personal analysis. And a lot of that, it helps, it's like meditation, right? But it's meditation while moving the body.
I like that.
Yeah.
Meditation while moving.
Yeah.
It's so funny. Just this week, I had a coaching client, who told me that they've gotten out of the habit of running. And it's frustrating to them. They're an entrepreneur, small business owner as well. And they say the exact same thing. Literally, this is just a couple of days ago. The exact same things that you just described. Their business analysis, great ideas, thoughts about what they want to do in the future. All that stuff comes when they're doing their run.
Yeah.
And they really want to commit and find a way to get back on that regimen.
And it doesn't necessarily have to just be running. When we look at it, sometimes when we've had sports injuries when we were younger and everything, most people don't realize that running has the highest incidence of injury of a non-contact sport.
Right.
So form is super important and everything, but sometimes with those pre-existing injuries and stuff, running is just not going to be a viable option. Find something that you enjoy to do where you're moving your body, whether that's dancing, whether that's swimming, biking, go outside, move your body. People constantly, I have patients all the time, oh, I just walk. What are you talking about? Just walk. You're outside, you're moving your body, you're increasing your heart rate, you're getting fresh air and sunshine.
Yep.
Stop decreasing the value of that because you did something better than somebody who sat on the couch. Give yourself that pat on the back.
Oh, that's real talk right there. All right, last couple rapid fire questions. Worst part and best part of owning a business. Worst part and then the best part.
Okay, so worst part, I definitely think, especially for my industry, if I don't work, I don't get paid. So worst part is that you do have to I'm a crazy person that so a year after I started my practice, I gave birth to my son. So we all know the likelihood of a small business failing within the first 5 years. If 1 year into owning this business, I took off 3 months from that business, I would probably have imploded my business. So luckily he was my third. And so I'd had 2. I kind of knew what I was doing and everything. So I literally took less than a week of maternity leave before I went back to work. And some of that is literally just necessity for being a business owner. Sometimes you have to buckle down and do hard things. And there's a difference between hurting and being injured. And so even though my body was in an intense state of healing, physically, I could still do all of the things that my job required. And if I wanted my business to thrive, you do some hard work, you got to just make some sacrifices. So that's hard. I feel in a good place now where I have 2 associate chiropractors that if I'm hurt, if I'm injured, they can kind of take up the slack a little bit and help support me. But in those early days of being an entrepreneur, that wasn't an option. When I first started my practice, I was the cleaning lady. I was the billing person, the secretary, everything.
Right.
And sometimes you got to start small and just do hard work and build it up. But the best part of owning my practice is my patients. My patients are awesome people. I learned so many cool things and get to really experience alternative viewpoints through their experiences. And my chiropractor has this great saying that healing others heals me. And I really do find that talking with other people, learning about their experiences, their culture, it really, really is it brings a peace to me and a harmony. Yeah.
That's awesome. If you were not a chiropractor, fill in the blank, you would be?
I'd be a chemist.
Okay. All right. Last one is, I know you like to travel.
Yeah.
And we talked about your trip to Spain one time before. Favorite place, if you could get an all expense paid trip for 1 week, you could take the whole family or just yourself, where would you go?
I've been very, very fortunate that I've had opportunities to travel Europe. I studied abroad, seen a lot of Europe. I honestly right now, I just got back from a few weeks ago. I did a trip to Europe, to Italy.
Okay.
That right now I feel like going that far and experiencing different cultures like that is not my motivation right now. Like right now in this moment, I would go back to Hawaii. Hawaii, most people don't realize that Hawaii, Hawaiian people are like Native Americans, there is just a totally different culture there. And the ocean and the culture is very peaceful to me. It very much is like home. Even though I've lived in Texas longer than I've lived anywhere else in my life, Hawaii still has a special place in my heart that I'm struggling that I want to go to the ocean right now.
All right. I love that. There's a couple notes that I'll just highlight as themes for our post-game notes for the listener. Dr. Ashley played a wide variety of sports, and I have to believe that foundation gave her exposure to so many different aspects of her body, which undoubtedly help her now. So don't just limit yourself to one thing. Expose yourself to as much as you can, and that's in business, that's in leadership. Get exposure. Translating athleticism in one thing to another thing. That's how she got to rowing. It opened up the door. She didn't do it forever, but the fact that she was able to translate one thing to another, I thought was awesome. What sports teaches, she said, is discipline and prioritization. Discipline and prioritization. So if you're thinking about getting your kid in sports, you can probably be rest assured that that's something that they'll get from it, including enjoying the suck, as she described it. Enjoying the suck, which is sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. Get it done, not because you feel like it, but just getting it done because it's work that needs to get done. I love the commentary around leadership. Knowing the abilities of your team, trusting them to do the work, and then delegating that work appropriately, I think is a win no matter what size business that you're in. Then lastly, for me, was the strong body supports a strong mind. And goes hand in hand with the life of a chiropractor. So, Dr. Ashley, it's been a lot of fun having you on, learning more about your journey. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much for listening. If you got value from this podcast, don't keep it a secret. Subscribe, leave a rating or a review, and share it with someone you know. Until next time, remember, our world is starving for bona fide leaders. Take your leadership to the next level by applying at least one thing you heard today.